WHBC Broadcast Center. Find out more about area businesses, agencies, and events.
It's what's going on right now.
This is Spotlight.
All right, it is a Wednesday morning, time for Spotlight on 1480 WHBC. Pam Cook with you this morning, and this is one of my favorite spotlights because we learn so much on this spotlight, and our good friend Dominic Fonte is in studio with us. Dominic Fonte and Associates, Cutler Real Estate, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. So I don't even know where to begin. We were just talking off air because, every time I hear something about interest rates, I think of you because I think, maybe mortgage rates are going down and that's going to help people. They're going to start, more people are going to want to buy houses if mortgage rates are going down, right?
Well, the sweet spot is under 6%, technically. So, it went all the way up to 10, then 8, then 7, and now it's like 6.25 to 6.5 is a standard rate you could find. Now, the deviation to that would be, is there special programs out there, depending on your situation, which we could talk about. If someone wants to reach out to me, I'll give them more details based on their individual situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like I was mentioning to you off air, my son just refinanced his house and got 5.5%. So he went from 7.5 to 5.5, which is a pretty substantial savings, to try to offset inflation and other things.
Yeah. And when do you, by the way, if you would like to call in and ask a question of Dominic, you can sure do that. 330-450-1480. We'll take your calls this morning. When do you know or how do you know, like, to do a fixed rate or a variable rate, those kinds of things? How do you know what to do?
I'm very conservative, so I always like fixed rates.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a lot to do with your goals, your family goals, your loved one goals. So, for example, let's just say I was buying a piece of property and I'm transitioning. So, in other words, I'm buying it, the house prices are a little more, the interest rates are a little bit more, and I think that I'll be moving in 3 years or 5 years. I could possibly do an ARM loan, but here's the question. Let's say, you know how this goes, we have intentions, but then they don't materialize. And that's where you get into trouble. So I think if you were to consider a variable, you just want to have your calendar reminder a year before to really, really focus on, are you really going to move or not? And if you are, great, it'll be a benefit to you. But if you're not, you want to lock in as soon as possible. Okay. And then you can always pay extra. Like a lot of times if you just pay one extra payment a year, so let's say if your payment's $1,200 a month, $1,500 a month, or $2,000 a month. If you divide that by 12 and just pay a little extra on your principal each and every month, it'll take your 30-year loan down to 25 or 27, and then just a little more keeps winding it down. So with discipline, you build wealth because you don't want to pay 3 times of interest because that's what it is. The sale price times 3 is what you end up paying in interest over the course of time.
Okay. All right.
So to build wealth, if you can, believe it or not, this is how a lot of average people can build wealth is by investing in, hard assets. I call it appreciating assets, which is real estate.
Okay.
Versus a fancy car. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. Well, and I always, was fearful of, a variable rate.
I know. It is a little scary. I mean, honestly, they have different variations where it would be locked in maybe for 1 to 2 years, the lower rate. And that's why I'm saying to you, if you are to do that, you have to be on purpose. I mean, really on purpose. And you do that because maybe you're going to get a decent sized raise. Maybe you're getting a better job, things like that. If you switch jobs in the middle of your real estate financing, there's a good chance you may not get the loan unless it's in the same field because they have really strict rules these days.
Okay.
So, but it's kind of an interesting dynamic. And I think the most people that I talk to, really, they just look nationally or Google what the rates are. But there's so many variables that affect the interest rates as well as the down payment and closing cost. So, sometimes the rate may, like I think as a consumer, we always look at the rate. And then there's like 2-3 extra thousand in closing cost. So if the rate's slightly higher and the closing costs are $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 higher, if you do the math by the difference in the rate, you might say, you know what, I'll take the higher rate and pay less closing costs because it's better for me in the long run. Because I always look at, like, if you're in the house long term, how many years does it take to recapture that savings of getting that slightly lower rate? So you should talk to a professional if anybody's out there trying to figure it out. I know it's a pain because there's just so much.
And can be very confusing.
It really is.
Yeah.
And even to like agents a lot of times. But you want to deal with someone that's been around that gets it. And then the main thing, I guess, is based on your current situation, we would kind of, massage that into what's best for you and your loved ones because, I think the biggest thing I hear from people is they're afraid to make a mistake because it's a costly mistake because it isn't like we do this every day.
Yeah.
Most people only do it a few times.
Yeah. And I think this is exactly the reason why it's good to make friends with your local realtor, your local banker.
Oh, absolutely.
Become, that's what my parents did. I look back at my parents, the banker was a friend.
Yeah, handshake friend.
Yeah. Same thing with the person who helped them, buy the houses that I grew up in, the house that I grew up in, that kind of thing.
I think generally what's so confusing is there's just so many of us. There's so many bankers. There's so many, attorneys. There's so many doctors. There's just so many of everybody, but they're not all created the same. So I think the way my standard is, I'm very particular on how I like things done. And so everybody that I affiliate with have to operate on that level because that's how you give the maximum experience to the client.
Yeah.
But one little boo-boo creates great anxiety because it's a very expensive emotional process. And like I mentioned before, sometimes why we have to do this might be life-changing, huge life-changing things, right? Like a divorce or a death or cancer or job, financial, relocation, nursing home, dementia. There's just so many painful things out there that people are dealing with. And you want to have, I think, the smoothest, most relaxing, experience based on how you process things. And everybody, I have to say, they process it differently. I mean, it can be scary. And that's why I always say I like to be your headlights in the dark with what I do and how I perform and my team. I have a very dialed-in team. They operate exactly like I like, and we affiliate with people exactly like we are so that we can give the maximum calm, relaxing experience. Yeah. And we guide with the heart of a teacher.
See there. That's great. I love it. All right, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, I want to get an update on the market and how things are going. And we'll talk about some other things as well. Of course, Dominic Fonte and Associates, Cutler Real Estate, and it is Spotlight right here on 1480 WHBC.
Now back to Spotlight on 1480 WHBC.
And welcome back to Spotlight on this Wednesday morning. It is a day where we're going to discuss all things about just really, taking the plunge. Purchasing maybe your first home, your next home, your forever home, investment home. That's right. Investment properties out there. A lot of different ways to do it. And of course, Dominic Fonte and Associates. We have Dominic Fonte in studio with us. You can go to his website, dominicfonte.com. And if you have a question that you want to ask him, please give us a call today, 330-450-1480. I mean, you're going to get free advice here today while he's sitting here. So please give us a call if you want to ask him a question. He would love to chat with you. Before we get to some of this other stuff, I wanted to ask you, what's the market like now? We were talking, back when, how things were looking. What's it looking like now?
Well, locally is different than nationally.
Okay.
Nationally, believe it or not, if you've been hearing some of the headlines, the days on market are a little longer. The inventory, there's more inventory, which is important because the reason why the prices were going up so much, mainly, is because the interest rates went up and it created anxiety and people wanted to snatch up these homes, right?
Yeah.
And so they were paying a higher premium, which then drove up the prices, which in effect now has hurt our property values. So now we're paying more taxes. So everybody's complaining about that now. But supply and demand is always the driver. But I would just say in general, the market is locally doing very well for us because there's only 2 months of inventory. Nationally, there's 4 months of inventory. Now, what happens is in order to get a balanced market, and balanced means from the consuming standpoint, is there's enough buyers and sellers where you could actually negotiate again, where you would make an offer and then they'd counter and hopefully go back and forth and come to a meeting of the minds. And, it's a win-win for everybody. We haven't seen that in many years because it's always favored the seller, and the sellers are in the driver's seat, right? Well, when you hear days on market are going higher, so that means it takes longer, and 4 months of inventory nationally, which is up from 3 from just the last time we talked.
Yeah.
So before I came in here, I looked at our local surrounding areas, and we're about 1.9 to 2 months of inventory. So that means for a balanced market, you need between 5 and 7 months of inventory. So we're at 2 months inventory going into the winter, going into election. So it will slow down a little bit, and the rates dropped a little bit. But for our area, it's still favoring the sellers. So as a buyer, you want to work with a savvy agent so you can get the package the way you want it. But in the national scene, in other parts of the country, the inventory is picking up, and we're seeing some price reductions now.
Okay.
So you hear all spectrums of it, but I say when you look in your backyard, real estate is always local. So no matter what you hear, you have to distill it down to how it affects you and your loved ones. And so I am very up to date on this. So if you ever want to know and get an education, reach out to us at 330-418-1535 or go to, send me an email at Dominic@DominicFonte.com. But I would highly recommend, if anybody has any questions, feel free to call in. But in the meantime, it will probably be a little slower in November because of election, I think. And then we'll head into the winter, and still people that need to make decisions will still continue. And like I said, the rates are hovering around a little over 6 right now. And I find that there's a big movement once it gets below 6. Anything below 6 makes people happy. So if we see things in the 5s, you're going to see a lot more movement. And if we don't see more inventory in our area, then that means the prices are still going to stay a little higher.
Okay. And I know we were talking, Billy, off the air. We were just wondering, we were picking his brain because, we often wonder what, younger people than us think of, as they're trying to plan their futures. And Billy, what do you see, amongst your peers when they're talking about owning a home or renting or that kind of thing?
Well, the first question I think is, who do I meet with first? Is it the bank? Is it a realtor? Who should I call?
Right.
Is it bad to walk around and look at things? Where do I go first?
So first of all, what age group are we talking, just for fun?
Yeah, I would say probably 22 to 30.
Okay. So more than likely, this would be your first real estate purchase, right? Yeah. Okay, so you don't want to just ramble around and go to Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, and all that. And you don't want to just go to any lender online. I'm not saying good or bad, but there's a certain procedure on how you want to do it. So hypothetically, if you were to get a loan, there's a 15-step process from the very beginning to the very end when you actually get the keys. 15 steps. Now, I always say an informed decision maker is a happy decision maker. So the most important thing you can do is there's no commitment, there's no anxiety. So sometimes I think human nature is, I'm suspicious because he's a salesperson, that kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
And so, but I say, like with the advisor, the heart of a teacher, a trusted advisor, which is what I am, you would have a conversation based on what your wishes are, maybe your fears, and then we would just kind of have a conversation. So the agent or realtor would be number one. Don't go getting pre-approved online, push buttons and all that kind of thing. Because like I mentioned earlier, we're not all created equal, are we?
No.
And so like if you go to the wrong lender, so though you could go to the right lender and have the wrong originator, and the originator is the person that takes your information. And if the originator does not understand the underwriting guidelines, which are changing all the time, then you will have one miserable experience. See, because a lot of times I think with not having the maximum amount of exposure and experience, you're like focused maybe like, what's the rate? What's your fee? What's your rate? And so that, there's a combination of many things. So I think have the consultation first. And I always do that. And it's basically a 15-step process. And then I give you literature so that based on how slow or fast you're into it, because not only is it expensive and scary, but it's also very, very emotional. And so there's reasons why we do want to do it or not do it. And it could be building wealth, protecting our families, tired of paying rent, just these kinds of things. I would baby step it that way, and I would highly recommend reaching out to Dominic Fonte and Associates. I have a team. So my son's on the team and Zev Braun's on the team, and they are very well trained with the heart of a teacher. They can sit you down, give you a lot of literature, go through the experience so you understand the bird's eye view of what you might experience, and then you process it. And guess what? If you feel this makes sense to you and your loved ones, then we go to the next step. We'll explain to you the next steps. But I promise you, if you go rambling around and walk through and do all kinds of things, you'll get hooked up into the wrong situation and you won't have a pleasant experience. That's just, unfortunately, the way it is.
No, I think fortunately, and I'm glad you're explaining that, because that's good to know. Because honestly, when you think about it, even when you purchase a car, if you go to the wrong lender, you're going to have an issue.
I mean, I don't know how many people I talk to will say, I'm on Zillow all the time. Well, Zillow has a nice searching mechanism, and it's easy for consumers to use, but it's not accurate in the sense that they're not held to an ethical high standard like real estate agents, because they gather information from the public, from the real estate industry, from foreclosures and short sales. So I get people call me and say, hey, Dom, I want to see this foreclosure. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't see it here. Well, so sometimes what they'll do is they'll pick up public records. So if you're late on your payment, and let's say the process is starting that you may be in a foreclosure situation, unfortunately, it may be 1 to 2 years before that happens. So you can't just randomly show the house, and it doesn't work that way. But the consumers don't know that because they don't really understand. And so that's why, and a lot of agents don't understand either. So that's why I said, not all agents are created equal. So you want to work with someone that understands it. And if you have any doubt about Dominic Fonte and Associates, go to dominicfonte.com, which is my website.
Yeah. There's
over 480 5-star reviews that people actually type in their experience. And I would recommend, if you have any worry, anxiety, any concerns, because like I said, I'm a busy guy too. So I want to help with the heart of a teacher. And if I can't help you, of course, I'll tell you. But I think if you read those reviews, you'll get a sense of how we operate. And I think very much after you read that, you would be like, okay, when do we meet? And like I said, it's not a big obligation. It doesn't cost you money. It's more like anything. With the heart of a teacher, I'm going to explain to you the bird's eye view of the process and what steps to do it, and actually give you a check off. So you have a 15-step check off, so you know exactly what you can do.
And, this goes back all the way to 2013, these reviews. So,
right.
I mean, and you've been in business longer.
A long time.
Long time.
Well, in the old days, we would get written recommendations. Well, then when Google and all the technology changed, I'm like, gee whiz, what do I do with these paper reviews? Well, they weren't called reviews back then. They were just people wrote nice things.
Yeah.
But I know how our society is. Everybody's so plugged in now that many times, like when people will call me, and after we make the appointment, I'll ask them, hey, how did you hear about me and my group? And they'll say, oh, we found you on Google, or we read your reviews, or we were referred to you by somebody.
Yeah.
And so the importance is yes, it's very important that when you meet or talk to someone, and this could be anything, and I do it all the time with consuming products, but this could be a lender, it could be a product you buy, it could be a real estate agent, it could be whoever. Go online and check them out.
Yeah.
And see, because honestly, that would be a really good gauge of what you might experience. And I think, like in our industry, the biggest thing I hear is like lack of communication. I never know what's going on. And so like you might fester as a consumer thinking, I have no idea what's going on. I haven't heard from my agent. So you'll see when you read through these that communication is not a problem.
That's right. Absolutely.
Not a problem.
And that's why he's here. Knowledge is power, folks. That's
absolutely
a very important thing. All right. We will come back after we check into the newsroom and get some information for you. It is Spotlight on 1480 WHBC.
Now back to Spotlight on 1480 WHBC.
Welcome back to Spotlight on 1480 WHBC. DominicFonte.com. DominicFonte.com.
DominicFonte.com.
Yeah.
I should go there.
You should.
What can I find there?
You can find all kinds of things, first of all, but you can find 5-star reviews there.
Awesome.
And you got to go read them, and you'll get
my mom
sense
didn't,
of that.
My mom didn't write them.
Took it forever to do that,
do
didn't
all
it?
those, yeah. No, they have first and last names, so it's
they
legit.
Do.
It's
yes.
a legit thing.
And there's some great information there, but there's also a lot of other things there that you can take a look at. But there's also another one. whatsmyhouseworth.com.
Test it out. It's a neat little landing page. Basically, you just go to your URL and type it in or Google it, whatsmyhouseworth.com, and it'll have, you just put your address in and your information, basic information, and you will receive, I imagine, in less than a minute, a full report of things that are happening around your house. Now, keep in mind, it's an algorithm. It's like a computer-generated report, but it has very good information. And it's fun to do just so you have a gauge. Now, I know a lot of people just received their Stark County updated report.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many calls from that, but, people are upset because it went up too much. Some went up $100,000. Wow. And so, so they're worried because that's going to raise their taxes. But the important thing is, I always say an informed decision maker is a happy decision maker. So at the very least, I have two things. You can go there, domwhat'smyhouseworth.com, or if you reach out to me personally, text me, and I can set you up on Market Watch. So like, let's say if you're a potential buyer, maybe you're looking for a 1-floor house for your mom down the road. Not right away. You just are trying to understand what prices are. Because a lot of times people will say, well, they're asking X amount. I wonder how much they could come down. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of that has to do with what we talked about earlier, supply and demand, right?
Yeah, right.
So if there's more people looking for less supply, of course the prices are going to be higher. And by doing a market watch, which I can set you up on, and it's free, it would help you to see if you were looking to sell one day when you retire, maybe what the market is doing around your house, or if you pick a neighborhood where you'd like to move to, or maybe a loved one, we could do the market watch, and it would send you a weekly, monthly report of what's happening, what comes on the market, what goes under contract, and what is closed or sold. Because I think as the market ebb and flows, which it always does, it goes up and it goes down, it goes up and it goes down. It's always good to know. Now, you can't time it perfectly, but I think, again, as that informed decision maker, you'll be a happy camper, and I'm just offering this service to you.
And I would say also, and by the way, if you have a question, we've got, about 10 more minutes.
Call it in.
Give us a call. Don would be happy to talk to you. 330-450-1480. When you were talking with Billy about, people his age and what the steps are and what they should be doing, it surprised me just a little bit, but I know you, so I know how you operate, and it's wonderful. But when you said, they should come to you and you'll sit down and kind of take them through the first part of the first step.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm thinking, you're a busy guy. Do you really have time to sit down with people and that you're not making a sale right away necessarily?
No, it's building relationships. And like I said, with the heart of a teacher, in the long run, you may never buy, you may never sell. I don't really care. But if you feel I treated you right and I educated you and you feel authentic, that I'm authentic, right? Mm-hmm. You probably would tell someone, hey, if you ever need anything, you should call Dom.
Yeah.
And that's how I get 90% of my business. So my team is Dominic Jr., my son, and Zev Braun. He's like my son.
Yes.
And so these guys are trained with the program that I was describing. So what we do is we do consultations, buyer consultations, seller consultations. And so sometimes I think, you just worry that I don't want to be bothered. They're going to bug me. They're going to call me. No, we don't do it that way. We're not car salespeople, even though sometimes car salespeople get a bad rap. I work with car salespeople that are awesome, with the heart of a teacher. So just like I mentioned before, in all industries, you have people that kind of ruin it, I guess, or can ruin it for you. We don't do it that way. And if you have any inkling of insecurity about it, go to DominicFonte.com, start reading those reviews. And you will understand by the time you get through a dozen or so of them how we operate. And what I'm saying to you is authentic. And we do it with the heart of a teacher because we really do care. And like I said, I started out, I had not 2 nickels to rub together. Yeah. And so I struggled. And I remember, and I have empathy, and I understand what people go through. And so I think a lot of times it's just hard to make that first call because it's like, oh, geez, what if, I'm embarrassed. Maybe I don't want to share my information. So we would do it in a way where we would just have a conversation and just get a sense of where you are. And then we just guide you with like a GPS in the night, headlights in the dark. We walk you through kind of how it looks. And then if it makes sense to you, then you'll say, okay, I think I'm interested. What then would be the next step? So we give you this information that's a 15-step process, and it goes one by one of what you need to do and what order you need to do it. And everybody's different. So sometimes, I might just do something today or tomorrow and not make a decision for a year because maybe I'm working on cleaning up my credit. Maybe I'm working on saving some money. Maybe there's a special program out there. A lot of people don't know this, like FHA or VA. So if I'm a veteran, you can buy a house with actually zero down. And if it's FHA, it's 3.5% down payment, not 20% down. And there's nothing wrong with that if your long-term view is you're planning on staying in your home. Do you realize that if you know the right lender to go to, your closing costs are only $500?
Oh my gosh.
Instead of $4,000 or $5,000.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, I'll find agents will bring offers to me, FHA, asking the seller to help them with their closing costs, asking for $4,000 or $5,000. And the seller's like, why do I have to pay all this money? Well, they don't. It's all negotiable, right? So it's very, very important to work with someone that gets it, that knows. And there are like thousands of programs out there, community programs, local programs that the lenders are doing to help lift up the community that they don't really advertise, probably because they're not big profit makers for them. Yeah. But the point is that you benefit because of the knowledge that we're going to share with you with the heart of a teacher, so that now you are that informed decision maker. And the sooner you get into the arena, you dip your toe into it, and we do it based on how secure or how well we feel. Read the reviews, see what you experience, and then make the call. You have nothing to lose.
That's right.
You have nothing to lose. And my team is here to help walk you through the process, educate you, and then if it makes sense to you and your loved ones, then next, what do you do next?
Yeah.
And we'll guide you there.
Because
and if nothing happens, it doesn't cost you anything. Just refer us to people that you know, like, and trust.
And wouldn't you want to know, like, that
I
now
would.
is not the time for you,
I
or
would.
maybe you need to work on
Right.
this sooner rather than later? I mean, because you don't want to go in backwards and then go, oh gosh.
I mean, think about this.
Yeah.
If I feel insecure about the economy, I feel insecure about the interest rates, I'm hearing news flashes, I'm going to hit pause, and I might miss out. Because like I said, nothing easy, comes without a little bit of effort, right? So if it looks easy, more than likely it's not going to be easy. Or if it looks hard, maybe it's not as hard. So instead of thinking of it in your head and blowing it up into your head and making you more nervous, I mentioned before that between the Gen Z, Gen X, millennials, and boomers, that's 275 million people that are different stages. Like Billy just said, between 25 and 30, or 32, whatever he said, those people are sitting on the sidelines renting, spending thousands upon thousands renting. Basically, I understand there's a need for rentals, but if there's a way that he could get into the arena and start paying for something that will build in his portfolio down the road, he will have an asset that he could pass on to his family. He would have a place that he can customize. He can make it his own. I don't know how many people have rentals and the tenants are like, well, I don't really want to do that. That's not my house. And so, can you imagine if you had your own home, you could paint it the color you want.
Do whatever you want.
You can knock out a wall if it's safe.
Yeah.
But at any rate,
Absolutely.
folks, go to DominicFonte.com, check out the reviews, get a sense of what you'll experience, and reach out to us. Make that call.
330-418-1535. And this is our final segment of Spotlight on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Dominic Fonte and Associates, Cutler Real Estate. We have Dominic Fonte in studio with us. And again, DominicFonte.com. Go to that website, take a look around, look at the 5-star reviews. So much happening there. Look at his team, his associates, the folks that work with him, one of them being his son. But wonderful reviews for all of them. And just they do a great job. And, again, I'll say, back in the day, because you and I are, right. we have the right to say back in the day, it was such a fear, buying a house was the biggest deal of your life, and your parents were saying, you better buy a house and that kind of thing. And it was so scary. And I wish there was a person like you who said, come on in, sit down, I'll talk to you. Because most of them were saying, come on in, I'm going to sell you a house,
Well, it may be because that's how it was for me too. I was that person, you got to remember now, I bought my first home in 81 when the rates were 18%.
Oh.
And it was an arm loan like you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
And I was high anxiety.
Yeah.
They say growth takes place outside your comfort zone. Well, let me tell you, I was sweating bullets big time. I was scared. And it was really scary because 18% was ridiculous, but I thought that was a pretty good rate because it was up to 23. Mm-hmm. And as it was coming down, I thought better lash out and get it.
Yeah.
But you know what happens is, it's a little uncomfortable. And as we get a little bit uncomfortable, we get more comfortable. So don't be afraid to get outside your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to make that call. The reason why I'm the way I am, I think, is because I struggled. I really had a hard time getting my arms around it. So I remember that. And I wanted to make sure that as I became more successful, I try to become more humble and understand that everybody are at different stages of their life. But I can tell you one thing, because I am living proof. If there's a way that you could dip your toe into the arena of real estate. Now, it may not be for you, and that's why we have to have the consultation. And some people say, Dom, but you're so busy, and how do you have time to meet and da-da-da? And what if my price range is too low? Or maybe I'm wasting your time. No. That's why I say with the heart of a teacher, authenticity here. My team and I are trained exactly the same. And so unless you make that call and you have that sit down heart to heart, you won't know. And I can tell you right now, the reason why the rear view mirror is so small and the windshield is so big is because we never want you to look back and say, man, I wish I could have or I should have. I am giving you the opportunity with the heart of a teacher to waste no one's time but your own, because we will do this and you won't waste our time at all. We love helping people. I would recommend make the time, bring a friend. I'll educate them as well. And with the heart of a teacher, you will have the windshield in front of you. The future is in front of you. The wealth that you will build over the course of time of compounding. If let's say it goes up 4 or 5% a year, can you imagine?
Oh my gosh.
Here's the thing, guys and ladies. The rents are going up, and that's okay if you're in transition. But get educated. Be that informed decision maker so that you don't look in the rearview mirror and regret anything in the past. That's my mission, to help you. And so if I can help you, you could call me. You could text me. You can email me. We'll meet face-to-face at my office. We can meet at a coffee shop. We can meet at your house, at your apartment. I don't care. Whatever we can do to help you, moving forward in 2025, you don't want to miss the opportunity. Get outside your comfort zone. Make the call. I promise you, you won't regret it. And at the very least, you'll be an informed person to help one of your loved ones, even if you don't do anything.
That's right, because it's the fear of the unknown.
And believe me,
and once
growth takes place outside the comfort zone. I say this all the time. I'm living proof. I had a little square like this, and now I can operate a little bigger now because I forced myself. And by doing that, that will benefit you guys now.
All right. You can call 330-418-1535, 330-418-1535, and you can also go to DominicFonte.com. Thank you, sir, so much.
Everybody, be safe, and don't forget to get out and vote.